I message him again. I mean, it was this morning, or was it yesterday that he popped in the dock? That was last night. We are recording. We might be live.
Mm-hmm.
You're never sure until you load up the page yourself and look at it. But we are still waiting for Faraz. So let's see here. Yeah, we are live. So hello, internet. Welcome to JS
Hello.
Pre-Party. It'll be a
Think
JS
I'm.
short party if Faraz doesn't come. Or we can just use GitHub Copilot to generate what we say.
You read my mind.
Nice. I actually got into the OpenAI beta. I've been
Oh
playing with
yeah.
that. Yeah. I'm not supposed to talk about it. I can't remember. There was rules. They had rules. I was like, this is weird. And some of the rules was like no live streaming. I think I could talk about it on a live stream, but I can't actually show results on a live stream. And some of that's because they don't want bad results showing up. So,
Got to control that
uh,
PR. You know.
my initial reactions to OpenAI's GPT-3 results are all of the blog posts and the tweets and stuff that were auto generated that you saw that were like mind blowing. Specifically, I remember that one blog that like I was fooled about three quarters of the way through. I'm like, wait a second, this is not real. It's GPT-3. Those were all cherry picked pretty hardcore, I think.
Hmm.
So it has a selection problem. Like it will have good results, but it's not going to hit you with a good result every time. And so you have to like, hit the API five, six, seven times. And you're like, oh, that one's great. And then you grab that one. So there's like this.
Well, it's like having a magic ball and you shake it. Every once in a while, you get the right answer.
Right.
Still got
You
that
keep
human
shaking
element
until you get the
involved,
answer you want.
but you didn't have to do all the work to get to do all that writing yourself. So it's still
Right.
better than.
But it's an illusion
Yeah, it is.
to a certain
That
degree.
is. I agree. Like from a Copilot standpoint, it seems like a grand illusion when you see all of the horrible results that get posted. Like I saw one that was like validate JWT token, and it just returned true.
Nice. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Like thinking about it more, and like all of the licensing, like and all of that problematic stuff aside, like it might actually be better than like having at a blank editor and figure out where to go. Like might give you like a good starting point to just get going and play around.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but you're not intimidated. You're not hoping. You're not thinking you're going to lose your job.
No,
How many
Yeah.
years do
not
we
by
have?
AI at least.
Yeah. Yeah. How many years do we have before it's better?
Oh,
Like
I
it's
think
it's
that
sufficiently better that it's like better at coding than we are. Ever?
uh, never.
Never. Oh, okay. Job security. What do you think, Adam? Ever?
Well, I think. Hmm.
And by ever, let's
What would
let's time
change it?
box
I
it.
think
Ever.
what would
100
change it would
years.
be quantum computing. I think that's what would change things.
That's kind of like a Deus ex machina, though, right? It's like
Well, I
if
think once that starts to stabilize, really, I think once that becomes more predictable and stable, and in a smaller form factor, you can actually control more. Things get a lot more different. That's the unknown paradigm. So that's what would change things. So if that becomes state of the art and applicable on the day to day, that's where I think we will begin to see change in AI. Is quantum computing.
But that would fundamentally change my job anyway if I had to write like for quantum computing, right?
yeah,
Well, I think the accessibility of, yeah, I suppose so, but I think we would still be writing for humans, right? Like we would still be creating software for humans, so that wouldn't change. But I think the accessibility, the computing power of that's what would change it. Because right now it's sort of like still black box a bit. It's still somewhat ephemeral. It's not like ubiquitous like current non-quantum computing is. You know, it's still on the innovation state. Once the innovation's there and it's sort of stabilized, I think that's when AI can become far more powerful. Because I mean, you're sort of going all ways. You know, you're not going one way or you know parallelized. You're sort of like infinite possibilities, one right answer in a second. So, which I would recommend a book if you're listening to this called Randomize by I think it's by
Randomize?
Andy Weir. Yeah, Randomize. It's part of a bookology, anthology of books, basically on Audible.
Is it by Andy Weir?
It's by Andy Weir. Yeah.
Nice. Oh,
And it's part of a book series called Forward. I've only listened to like a few of the books so far of it. It's like 6 or 7, I think, books in the series, different authors, but Randomized is pretty cool. It talks about predictability and you know, like Andy Weir style. It's very sciencey, scientific, and even you know, real science, not fake science, except for when it's slightly fake, you know, or slightly, you know,
Indistinguishable
forward
from
thinking, you know.
magic.
But that's what's
speaking of him,
changing.
I did really enjoy his Project Hail Mary book.
Oh, you did, huh?
Yeah. I didn't enjoy the Moon book, whatever that book was, but
The Martian. Oh wait, the moon.
no.
Okay. What is that book? Yeah, I was
Term,
gonna
or
listen to
not
that.
Terminus. Yeah, it
Um,
wasn't that good.
what's her name? Rosario Dawson. She's the one who voiced that.
Yep.
It was either her voice or the book for me, and I'm still trying to figure out which one it was, because I like her as an actress, and I was like, I'm gonna get into this. This is gonna be good. Since you like Andy Weir, I would recommend The Egg and Other Stories. It's like 7 different short stories. I wish there was like 70 because they were all good. So that was pretty solid.
I will check that out.
Yeah, what is that? What's that moon book
Artemis.
called? Artemis, yeah. Project Hail Mary is probably my all-time favorite book in terms of.
Has Andy Weir ever written a book about Vim or TypeScript?
There we go.
He may have included Vim in The Martian, you know, behind the scenes.
Mm.
You know, when describing the terminal, he may have implicitly meant Vim, because why would you do anything but? So kind of.
I'm pretty sure that whole plot line got replaced with the growing potatoes plot line.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was Vim and then it went to potatoes.
that's right.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, the book is so much better than the actual movie. Although the movie is still good.
It is.
They're
Yeah.
like equally good on their own planes, right? It's an amazing story, and that's an amazing adaptation of the story. But definitely, you know, the book is better.
Mhm.
I'll
But I
listen-
think
yeah,
Project
listen
Hail
to the
Mary is
book.
better than The Martian.
I do too. Yeah, I was without giving any of the plot away and the ending away, I was disappointed somewhat in the ending, but also excited about the ending. It wasn't what
You
I
know?
expected. You know, so
Yeah.
in that way, I was happy. You know, that it was different than what I expected.
Yep. Yeah. If it went the other way, I think like it'd be hard to do in a satisfying way.
Yeah.
So like the way that it ended was
We should do it
about as good as it
backstage
could be.
and spoil a bunch of stuff for that because I mean I could talk at length about that book.
Oh,
Pick
yeah.
your
There's a
favorite
lot I loved
project.
about that book.
Project Hail Mary,
Mhm.
Vim, or TypeScript.
Ooh.
What's
I'm
the
gonna say-
question? Pick what? Pick a topic.
Pick your favorite of those 3.
Oh, it's easy for me.
Oh, I know that. It's
I'm gonna go with TypeScript.
oh my goodness.
I know.
You
I
are-
know.
Yeah, you're all in.
Yeah.
So if you had to pledge your allegiance to Vim or TypeScript, you'd pledge to TypeScript.
Oh no.
Oh,
Vim's gonna outlast TypeScript, isn't it?
Oh, it will for sure.
So 20 years from
I'm pretty
now,
sure
you're
the
gonna regret
AIs
that.
will be using Vim to write all the code.
Oh,
JKL for sure.
Yeah.
if we teach them.
Mhm.
You have to machine
They
learn
will-
that.
Yeah.
Once you
They'll have a
machine learn it,
keyboard.
why? Yeah,
Of escape keys.
just all escape keys.
Hmm.
I think the interesting thing about AI though is retain knowledge. Humans forget, right? Like once it's learned,
I don't know. Siri can't remember anything.
well, that's a different subject. But once
Is it
it's
so?
well, she's not really AI, is she?
She sure is. I mean, she's not AGI, but she's the best we have. I mean, not she's the best we have. She's right at the bleeding edge of the
Right.
best in natural language processing.
Let me reframe that then.
On
Once you've trained
device,
the
too.
model,
On to
the model doesn't change. Like the learnings of the model doesn't change. Once the model's learned and you don't feed more learning into it and that learning hasn't changed, it's not going to forget itself, is what I mean by that. Whereas humans will read a book, go on 5 years and forget most of it, and have to re-listen to remember the details. Whereas the model's going to stay the same. It's not going to forget itself. Now, if there's a flip bit or data corruption, that's a different story. But considering if the hardware stays the same and the storage doesn't change and whatever the hardware tech behind things doesn't change, it will remain true. Whereas humans will forget. And your memory is obviously one of those things where you remember, but your every new emotion, every new interaction with that memory changes the memory.
Hmm.
right.
So it's you can't even trust your own memory even.
One of the recent practical AIs, there was a guy who's with Pinecone, and they do vector databases. And he says that one of the signs that were very early with regards to machine learning is that everything is compute bound and everything's focused on compute. And he said, really, if you think about a brain, it's mostly about memory and less about compute. The compute is the present, but the memory is the past. And most of our algorithms, most of our models do not have long memories because we're just like computing in the real time.
Mm.
But we need to be able to stretch that out. And that's what he thinks vector databases are well suited for that. There's a lot of chatter going on that it seems like you're changing your answer.
I am. Yeah. I think we're going to get to the Citadel at the end of time, and we're going to see that the quote unquote man behind the curtain of AI is just going to be a big Vim macro.
What if it's Data from Star Trek Next Generation?
Could be too. That'd be awesome. He's the representation of
Yeah,
in
the physical
space.
manifestation of Vim.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Vim's gonna outlast TypeScript. I think TypeScript is has a shorter half life.
Yeah. I was listening to
isn't
your
some of that gonna
your
get built in?
So I was just going to say that I was listening to your changelog with Ryan Dahl
Mm-hmm.
on Dino, and I do like his idea, and I kind of hope it comes to fruition. I think he said that on there about like, maybe one day the JavaScript interpreter in browsers will just ignore the type annotations and run your JavaScript, and like I think that would just be the best of both worlds, because then it would be about the Vim LSP, but it's the TypeScript LSP plus JavaScript. Like that's all it would be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I've been going like bringing it back to Vim since I've got that permission, I guess. I've been going all in on NeoVim, and specifically like diverging quite a lot from Vim. Like mostly I've been using NeoVim, but still safely in a hybrid way where I could easily switch back to Vim.
Yeah.
But I've been going down the Lua config and the Lua
Right.
plugins route. Whew, it's
Very
interesting.
interesting. Actually, I just logged a piece of news. I think it was yesterday or Tuesday, where I had a question at the end because it was a NeoVim plugin that does some cool dimming around like your current context, kind of a Zen mode thing, which is
Ah.
based on a Vim thing, but works better because of reasons that I can't remember. And at the end of it, I said I had logged some stuff over the years that was like NeoVim / Vim, but now this is just a NeoVim thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is like, are we going to start to see these where certain new, shiny, fun, interesting plugins and configs or whatever you can do with NeoVim start to pull the Vim people over because it's like no longer supporting both. It's like, nah, this is a NeoVim thing. And so
Yep.
it sounds like maybe a little bit of that. You're kind of like,
Yeah,
going
I think
further
so.
into the NeoVim side.
Like it's gonna get weird because I mean, you've been able to do it for a while, maybe, and maybe I'm just late to the party here, but like you can rewrite your
No, that's for us.
complete. You can rewrite your complete vimrc or init.vim in Lua. You can just have an init.lua now, and like it's making things kind of exponentially harder because it's like, well, I just want to keep this in Vim, so now I have to translate between Lua and Vim script, or I have to translate the other way to put this into Lua, and there's just like that added level to it, and yeah, it's interesting. But I'm all
Yeah.
there for the built-in LSP, and the tree sitter plugin is pretty darn cool.
That's the one that the thing uses. Now that you say it, it rings a bell. Tree Sitter, which allows it to do smarter dimming than the
Yeah.
the Vim script based dimmer plugin that it was inspired by. Tree Sitter. So
Yeah.
what's Tree Sitter doing?
Tree sitter is like a. I'm probably gonna get this wrong, so don't take all of this knowledge from me. But it's like a AST. It's like building up an AST for the individual file that's being built, right, or that's being displayed in the buffer, and
Okay.
then that lets it intelligently walk the AST to try and figure out how to like the most common use right now is to how to intelligently or in a much better way highlight the file for syntax highlighting. And the difference between like that and like the LSP, the language server service protocol, or what I don't know exactly what that stands for, is that is like building up the entire world of the project to try and figure out what you're doing and relating that to other files, being able to find references to it and all of that. Whereas this is just the individual files and being able to walk that. And like the biggest difference I've seen with it is a lot of times, if you open up a big chunk of unlinted JSON, for example, like if I just have a JSON string with no line breaks in it, Vim is going to highlight a portion of that, and then it's just going to stop, and the rest will just be white text. With this, because of the way that it's parsing individual tokens, it can highlight the whole thing, and it's really not breaking a sweat to do it.
That's cool. Definitely can see why this particular thing was built with that and like was an upgrade for that reason. So, update for Ross may have overslept. He's awake and he'll be here shortly. And by shortly, I mean, 5 or 10 minutes. So hang tight if you're watching live. We will continue to talk about Vim and TypeScript and NeoVim now and Lua until Frost arrives for the real show. So you've written a little bit of Lua then in your configs.
Yeah, very
I
little.
wrote a little bit of Lua one time. It was nice. It was a good language. I liked it.
Yeah, I've always been kind of like not like ambivalent towards it, I guess, because it's what do you know about Lua? I guess what's the first thing that comes to mind about Lua?
Like it's embedded in a bunch of video games and stuff. Are you talking about the language? Are you talking about like it as
The
a
language
thing?
itself.
It's a lot like JavaScript.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's
What
true.
do you know? Let's maybe.
The first thing that comes to my mind is that arrays are indexed by 1, or they start at 1.
Oh, see, I don't even know that, so I didn't get that far.
Yeah.
So is that why you're like, not cool?
Well, when
Or do you think that's cool?
now I think it's cool, I guess, and I still don't know the technical details of that, but it comes down to everything being an object being like an object in Lua, and it has something to do with that, I think. But it's really forgiving, and it's such a small runtime that's why it's embedded everywhere, and that's why it was chosen for NeoVim, because it's just a small embeddable language. It's like built for that, which is really cool.
I like indexing by 1. I mean, it would take some getting used to, but conceptually, once you're used to it, it just makes more sense.
Sure, exactly.
Although life is 0 indexed because you're 0 for a whole year, and then you're 1. So maybe it maps to life better.
Yeah. What's that XKCD where he gets to the end of the time and the creator is like, oh yeah, I just hacked together life with Perl. Maybe it's actually Lua.
There you go. Isn't Lua the language that's used inside of Minecraft?
Maybe.
I know. I know it's built with Java, but I feel
Well,
like
that's one version, right? Yeah. The Bedrock version.
We've been here before. I'm having memories. Didn't you claim something about Minecraft that ended up being wrong, and we had to splice it in or correct it after the
Probably.
show?
Probably.
Something about JavaScript. So I'm not ready to hear your claims about Minecraft, but I believe the scripting in Minecraft is.
See, I think I'm left out of that party because I only ever play it on a Mac, and that is the Java version that is
Yeah.
playable on Mac.
This here says the Minecraft script engine uses the JavaScript language.
Ah,
That was published on Minecraft.net on December of 2018. So it seems like it's official.
nice.
Yeah, for my oldest son, a book for programming that uses Minecraft, and you can create kind of like automated Minecraft things. I thought it'd be a nice introduction, like to get him into programming. He already liked video games, obviously. And it was such a pain in the butt to get the actual like Java, like it's on Mac with Java, and you had to install something in addition, like a sidecar of sorts, in order to get this, like to inject your code in. This was like an older book, which probably now, like I think with this JavaScript scripting API, it's probably a lot nicer. But it was so much cruft and like ceremony and struggles that we never got anywhere. It was a bummer.
Sounds like a good introduction to software development.
Yeah. If you can make it through this to the point where you can actually write a single line of code, you can be a software developer. Yeah, there was no Docker container or Replit or glitch. You know, there should have just been a glitch to do stuff. But no.
That is really cool though. Like that it may not be super accessible, but it is something that kind of melds two interests together and can really take a love of a game like Minecraft and turn it into practical skills.
Yeah. Well, that's like the number one thing that people say. You know, we used to ask everybody how they got into programming on the changelog. We've given up that practice, but we used to do that to everybody. And probably like I wouldn't say 9 out of 10, but maybe 7 out of 10. Like 70% of people were like video games and then programming.
Yeah.
Or my dad had a computer when I was a kid.
Calculator.
TI-86. That was definitely my first time I ever wrote a function that wasn't on paper.
Sinclair something, I believe, too. Sinclair, maybe. Rings a bell.
What about you,
My
Nick?
first computer did not have internet. My internet was a Microsoft Encarta 95 CD.
Oh yeah,
that
I had
in.
Encarta. Oh sweet.
Yeah, that was awesome. But then in high school, I had the TI-83 calculator, and we could use that on tests. And I remember writing something in their scripting language that would not only give me the answer for some very specific problem, but it would show me like the work to copy down so that it looked like I did all the work myself.
Nice.
And yeah, I used that. Like it helped me on one test, I think, and then it was useless.
So I
And
mostly
drawing the
just played
Sierpinski
Nibbles.
triangle on the calculator, that was just copying and pasting the code for that.
I just played Nibbles, which is the snake game, pretty much.
Oh, yeah.
In class, like got me through high school playing that game because I was so bored. And then I had a couple of smart friends who actually did programming their calculators to do advanced things, and then I learned from them. I was like, wow, this is amazing, because you could do all sorts of things. So Tim in the chat says that the Lua is best known as a scripting language in World of Warcraft. Might have been what I was thinking when I said Minecraft. I knew there was a big game that did Lua scripting. But I still remember the day in high school when one of my friends was in programming class and I was in math or social studies. I don't remember. And he made a website that day and he showed me at lunch. And it was a GeoCities site and it had one picture in the middle of it. It was the Secret of Mana main character, which was a video game I loved for the NES. Not NES, Super NES, back in the day, which had great graphics and music and was like a 3-player live-action RPG style game, spectacular. And he was also way into that game. And in the game, there's like a time where you turn into stone. I can't remember why, like the main player, and it's like a sprite, you know. And he's like, "Check it out, dude. I got Secret of Mana on my webpage." And I'm like, "Cool." He's like, "Now check this." And it's just like the sprite in the middle of the webpage. And it says like his name above it, you know, like a H1 or whatever. He's like, "Now watch this." And he rolled his mouse over the top of the sprite and it went from color to black and to grayscale, you know, like he froze like a stone. And it was like a mic drop moment. I was like, "No way." Amazing. He's like, "Do it again, do it again." Like he's just like moving his. And that was my first time where I was like, programming's cool.
That's
Yeah.
The
awesome.
websites are cool. But my first computer wasn't until I was 18 years old. It was pretty much a Napster machine. This
Yeah.
isn't being recorded, right?
It's okay.
I did
I
a
would
lot of
just
like,
download the songs I already owned.
oh yeah,
Right.
I could buy them on
Sure you did.
CD and then go on Napster and I'd download them because I wanted
The digital version.
a digital version.
yeah. And then
CD
skinning
ripper was
Winamp, that was
broken.
awesome.
Skinny Winamp was awesome. Oh, here comes Frost. Anything
I
else?
also had
Should we
a
let
lot
him
of
in? I don't know.
hex.
You had what?
I did a lot of like hex editor stuff with AIM. I remember that. I don't really remember what I was
Really?
doing.
All right, I'm here. I set the record for the latest guest ever.
Yeah, you did. You are 35 minutes late, but you allowed us to have a good chat session just talking about
Yeah.
everything and anything and nothing.
Yeah. Oh man. Sorry guys.
It's all right. Does
I,
anybody
I
have a hard stop?
Let me see. I might. I got a 1. Oops.
Oh, you do.
I
Well,
do
that's
have
in
a 1.
25 minutes from now.
It is.
I didn't realize Adam was gonna be on here too. Nice
Well,
to see you, Adam.
good to see you, Frost.
It's been a while.
I can
So
hang
for us,
a
we
bit.
are already live. We're already recording, so everything should be good. Maybe do a quick mic check for you, and then we'll record locals as well. We just won't upload them unless we need them.
Okie
My
dokie.
person's
Let's see.
call though. So
So Riverside does all that now. You don't need the local recordings except as a backup.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's
All
working
right.
pretty well thus far.
Test, test, test. All right, my local recording is going.
Yeah, you sound good when you're. You get
Test,
your mic,
test.
Get your mic a little closer.
All right,
Don't
let me
mind.
put it here in front of the computer so that it's
Yep.
really close. Yeah, now you guys are gonna you guys aren't gonna mention that I was late on the live show, are you?
You'll see. No.
you'll see.
Watch, you guys are gonna like sneak it into a song, like some
Yeah.
kind of song about time or something, and you're gonna like weave the lyrics throughout
Yeah.
in a really sneaky way. Oh my god!
Pink Floyd's "Time."
would
is the
never
only
do
song I
that.
can think of right now. Well,
yeah, you
that's
just play those sound effects from Time.
Yeah.
You know those like coins and
Right.
clocks dinging
eight-
and all that.
And 8 minutes later, when the actual song starts, you show up. It's like, hey. Actually, that was long enough. We could probably just like ship it as a backstage episode. Just like, hey. That was like probably a half an hour BS session about
What were you guys talking about?
books, Vim, TypeScript, NeoVim, Lua, Minecraft,
AI.
well, AIs. I can't remember what else. All sorts of things.
Nice. No, I just I thought that my first thing tomorrow or today was my stand up at 11, and I just didn't check my calendar, so I happened to randomly wake up at like 10:15, and I'm like, oh shit. and then I had to Uber from my girlfriend's
wow.
apartment, and we live like 30-minute walk from each other, and I was gonna do a walk. But yeah, no, I just Ubered over, grabbed because my equipment is here at my place. And
Right. So you don't have
yeah.
stand up to get to, do you?
I'm just gonna skip it. It's okay.
All right. I was gonna say because that's coming up here in 20 minutes.
Who did you stand
Yeah,
up
no.
with?
Yeah, rest of the wormhole team.
You and
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Me and two people. It's
Yeah.
it's small.
You
but
can
that's
submit
why-
yours via text then instead.
Yeah.
Working on wormholes. Done.
yeah, I'm on a
Okay.
podcast talking
No
about
Marketing
wormhole.
wormhole.
Blockers
Yeah,
is
exactly.
JS Party to promote wormhole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So okay. It's okay. It's
Too easy.
it's
I
allowed.
just did your stand up for you. Go ahead
Yeah.
and copy and paste that.
Just send them the YouTube link. You know,
That's right. Here we go.
be like, we're doing the stand up live today.
That's right.
All right, are we good to go then? We all have the doc. The doc was great. There's lots of help for us, so thanks for putting that together.
Oh yeah, thanks. See,
And we'll
I didn't.
just-
I wasn't completely unprepared. See,
No,
I
you weren't at all, which is why I was surprised when he never showed up. Like, where is he? So we're good. We'll
Yeah.
play the music. We'll get into it, and we'll just follow the doc, and it'll be an easy conversation with you
Gotcha.
doing most of the
Go
talking.
for it. Ship it.
All right.
All right. Let me get my timer out before I start, because I always forget. Okay. Here we go. That's right, friends. It's JS Party time. I'm Jared. I'm your internet friend, and I'm joined by a few of my internet friends, Adam, Nick, and special guest, but also regular person, Faraz. What's up, guys?
Regular.
Hoi hoi.
Hey, how's it going?
What's up?
It's going very well. So, Faraz, Adam, Nick, and I are here to grill you on Wormhole. So, unlike the rest of us who just talk about technology, you actually build technology and launch it into the world. Just kidding, Nick. Nick, you do stuff.
You can prove
And
it.
we like to bring you on to talk about the stuff that you built because it's always JavaScript based, it's always web based, it's usually interesting. We've done a show with you about BitMidi back when you built that. I think we did a show about your annoying website as well.
Yeah.
We talked about Virus Cafe, which I think you renamed because we all said, "Hey, this is cool. Rename it." It's called Speakeasy now. And now you're back with Wormhole. So let's dive into it. Tell us what Wormhole is, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks. By the way, thanks for always having me on to talk about whatever I'm building. It's always good fun. It's like
fun.
JS Party is like the first stop on my way to launching anything new.
There you
So
Happy to do it.
yeah, or changelog, I guess, because I think maybe one or two of those things you mentioned were on
I
changelog.
think BitMidi
Yeah.
was on changelog. And
And we've
I
done
think-
WebTorrent as well, so I didn't
Yeah.
list all the things, but
That's
yeah, we
true.
always like to talk to you because I mean it's cool because there's context, there's reasons why you build these things, but also like you're usually building with interesting technologies and like kind of pushing the edge of the browser, and so it's interesting I think just both to see what you're interested in, what you're building, but also the how I think is very helpful,
Mhm.
especially for those of us trying to build cool things, just to get the inspiration of like what you can do with web apps.
Mhm.
So tell us about
Yeah.
Wormhole.
Totally, yeah. So the goal with Wormhole was to be the fastest way to send files on the internet. So the way it works is you go to wormhole.app, you drop some files on the page, it encrypts them with a key that's generated in your browser, and then it sends the files to your recipient. So you get a link, you can send the link to them however you want. And that's basically it. The trick is it's really fast. So as soon as you drop those files on the page, the link shows up, and you can send it to your recipient even before the files have finished encrypting or uploading, and your recipient can just click to download them, and it uses streaming, which means that you could be like 1% uploaded and they'll be 1% downloaded. It's sort of like they can start to download it right away before it's something that I think is pretty unique as far as file transfer services go. And then the end-to-end encryption is the other part that's really unique. So we designed it in a way where we can't see your files. We don't want to see your files, and we do everything in the browser on your end. So you're encrypting the files, and then the link that you send to the recipient contains a decryption key, which they use to decrypt the files. And it's all done in such a way that the server never sees the key at any point. So there's no way for us to do anything with your files, even if we wanted to. And that's kind of Wormhole. That's the TLDR.
Yeah.
If I could, I'm curious how that works with like could you break that down for me a little bit of how the URL contains the key and I send that to somebody, and then how do they request the file without sending that piece of the key? Like, is it broken off in the front end of the recipient, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question, because your first reaction would be that, well, okay, when the recipient clicks the link, they're going to make an HTTP request. Their browser's going to make an HTTP request, and that's going to contain the key in it. And so obviously our server would get that request and could look at the key. That's what you'd think. But we're using the hash part of the URL, which is the pound sign or hash symbol, and we put the key after that symbol. And what that means is that that's never sent to the server. It's funny. Anytime any app, it's not just Wormhole. This is not like a thing we invented, but it's a common technique when you want to make any kind of app that deals with security. You can put like the key into that part of the URL, and it's totally an abuse of what that was originally meant for. Like, that part of the URL was meant for like scrolling the user down to a certain part of the page. So usually the way it works is the browser makes the request for the URL without everything that comes after the hash sign. And then once the page is loaded, then it looks for an ID, an element with an ID that has like the same name as the part after the hash symbol, and then it scrolls the user to that part of the page. So it's a way to sort of jump. It's like an anchor link thing, but it's really handy for creating apps where you want to have some part of the some piece of data that is accessible only on the client side and not sent to the server.
Obviously, anybody who has that link can get the file, right? It's not so much pinned to my IP address or some sort of MAC ID or whatever. Like, it's totally based upon the link. So if the link somehow gets out there, then technically, it's in the wild, right? Because the encryption or the decryption key is in that link. And so basically trust whomever you give that to. Otherwise, the trust that you're trying to build with Wormhole is broken.
Yeah, totally. So the link is like the password. It's like, it's similar to like a way a Google Doc works, where the link is is sort of the key into the document. It's totally the same. So if you really care about, if you're trying to send some super secret files, and you don't even trust the like chat app that you're using to send the link, and you think that someone is watching it or something,
Right.
then you can't send the link through it, obviously. So it is kind of there is a chicken and egg problem. So what you can do in that case is like take the key out of the URL and send that maybe through another channel,
Right.
and
The
so that
mail.
the two
Print
pieces
it
are
out.
not in the same place.
That's a joke.
Yeah.
Print it out. 'Cause that would be like that still isn't even secure either. But like some other, disconnect the hey, go get this here, and the hey, get this here with this key. Separate those messages into two different, conversations, so to speak, as a way you can build in security.
Totally, yeah, and I mean, some people, the specific model of security that we're going for, it's like we don't have accounts, we don't have any kind of notion of email addresses, so we can't do things like confirm who the downloader is by having them verify their email. We're not doing any of that. It's just like this link. It's really simple. It's just you get a link, and then the link is the the thing that you need to access the files and to decrypt them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This seems like a collection of really awesome ideas. One of the ideas that seems to be the best is around security, end-to-end encryption. And I can recall talking to you on Twitter about this, and I even went back to Jared, and I think even on Twitter I like outed myself, like, okay, so just because it's SSL doesn't mean it's secure. I didn't really consider what it really meant to be end-to-end secure or encrypted even. I use Dropbox. I'm a Dropbox user, so from that point of view, that end-to-end encryption and security was what piqued my interest, because sure, Dropbox can scan my files, and because of their terms of service, they can share that data with third parties and affiliates. Now they may not, or they may. I don't know. There's a lot of behind the scenes. Dropbox isn't connecting with me on the daily on what they've done wrong or done right. Those are obviously trying to be like the most least consumable postmortems ever, right? But this is a culmination of awesome ideas. Instant download because it's peer to peer. You got a lot of stuff you're probably building upon your knowledge of WebTorrent and the idea of peer to peer technologies, which you've gotten a lot of. But end to end encryption is, it seems like the hallmark here, right? Like because of this, everything else fits together. Like it's the glue. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think a lot of people, a lot of companies actually use the word encryption in a way that makes people feel nice and safe and nice and comfy when they see it. They're like, "Oh, encryption!" And in some cases, even like Zoom, the video chat application, was saying their app was end-to-end encrypted, which is even better. But it wasn't true. It was actually just false advertising. And so it's really worth looking into what exactly people mean when they say things are encrypted, and to really understand the distinction, and especially even the difference in end-to-end encryption. So those are not the same. They're not even close to the same type of guarantee for the user of an application. So I'll just quickly explain the difference in case people aren't familiar. So you can think of encryption like a lock, right? And let's take the case of Dropbox. So Dropbox stores your files. You send them to them over an encrypted HTTPS connection. So eavesdroppers on the network can't see the data. Once the data arrives to Dropbox, though, of course, they can see the data you sent them, and then they promise to store it in an encrypted form on their servers. And the key to ask yourself whenever someone says they're encrypting your data is okay, who has the key to unlock that encryption, right? So encryption is just a lock. It's just like literally like they think of like a physical lock, right? And it's really important when someone's saying, well, your stuff's locked up. Well, okay, who has access? That's the question. Who has the key? Who can open the data? Who can unlock it? And in the case of using Dropbox, right, they have the key. So it's good that they're locking it. It's good that they're not just letting it, like sit there unencrypted, but they have the key. And that's really important because a few years ago, back in 2010, Dropbox had a terrible bug in their website that made it so that you could log in to anyone's account using any password. They just forgot to check the password, that would make sure the password was correct. So any string would let you in to that account. This was a real bug for 4 hours. You could just get into any account. And rumor has it, I'm not sure this is actually true, but someone who worked at Dropbox, someone who had a friend who worked at Dropbox, this is very through the rumor mill at this point, told me that it might have been Drew Houston himself that committed that bug.
It makes a good story at least.
Yeah, it's through two people, so take it with a grain of salt. But anyway, that was a real bug that they shipped, and of course that's only possible, right? Because they have the key to your files, so you're trusting them to do a good job with it. And most of the time they do, but there's all these risk factors that come from giving that access out to other people. So if your data is encrypted and someone else has the key to unlock it, then it's not truly fully in your control. And encryption is about. It's about doing that encryption in a way that you are the only one that has the key. So it happens on your device, the key is on your device, and then now once you've done that encryption, the data goes across the internet. It doesn't matter what anyone wants to do. They can't access the data. They can't unlock that lock unless they have the key, and you're the only one that has it. And you can, of course, share it with certain people, but by default, it's just you who has it, and no one can see your data. So that's the key difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's tough to distinguish, but it's it means everything. When you really need that security, whatever it is. We even have circumstances where federal agencies can coerce, or what's the word when the government forces you to, go ahead and make use of that key that you have, even though for other reasons your business would never do that, but you can be forced to do that in compliance with government agencies unless you don't actually have the key. It has to be not possible. If it's possible, then it can come back to bite you. But So that's a huge part of what this is. The other thing is like you mentioned the speed, and I'll just say like the ease of use. For a long time, sending large files on the internet was kind of like the world of like kind of scurvy, spammy websites where you had to like
Still
kind of
is.
get. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're still out there, but
Yeah.
like you had to either pay some money to send a file, which always had like, yeah, who are these people? And then there's like a lot of email handoffs and redirects, and it was just never straightforward to do until Mozilla came out with their Firefox Send, right, which was a really cool service that I was glad existed, and they eventually shut it down, and Wormhole kind of came in to fill that vacuum. But can you talk about the why? I mean, you mentioned why Wormhole's different and interesting, but like, why would you want to build something like this? You have probably 1,000 ideas. Why work on Wormhole?
Well, I was really sad when Mozilla shut down Firefox Send because it was such a nice, simple product.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's no reason that this thing, couldn't be rebuilt and done in a way that is sustainable. And so that's kind of what we wanted to try, was to make a version of it that wouldn't need to, wouldn't get shut down. And it was also a really nice application of all the tech that I've been working on throughout most of my career. The peer-to-peer stuff from WebTorrent really does improve it even beyond what Mozilla did with Firefox Send. That streaming that I mentioned, so that the downloader can start downloading right away. The user experience stuff that we did too is actually another thing that Firefox Send didn't do. So we made it like, here's the thing, like when you're building, when you're building like a security product, sell it to people as going into all the security details about why it's great, like I just kind of did with you guys and told you all about end encryption, right? And then you're going to get some people who are like, oh, you know what? Yeah, that sounds like, I am worried about, people getting access to my files, so I'm going to use this thing that is more secure. But I think most people just care about like the experience of using it, and so I see this mistake made a lot when people are building, especially in the decentralized space, or even like in like the cryptocurrency world. You see this a lot, where people are making stuff that's so hard to use that they only get the true believers, like the really ideological people who would use it no matter how like terrible and hard it was to use, and everyone else who's not really that bought into the like ideology of like, oh, everything needs to be decentralized or everything needs to be whatever the buzzword is. Those people are not going to be sold by it. You know what I mean? Like if you're making a Twitter clone, for example, but it's decentralized, but it's like 10 times harder to use than real Twitter, right? Like you're not going to get any normal people to use it, quote unquote normal people. So that was the thing I wanted to be really careful when we were building Wormhole that we didn't do. Like I didn't want to be like, this thing is worse in a lot of ways, but it's most secure, and try to get people excited about that. It was like, it has to be better even if you don't care about security. Yeah. And so that's why that was like part of the challenge, was like, can you even do this? Like, can you? Because usually there's some kind of compromise when you're trying to increase the security or whatever. Like you're making it harder in some ways. You're making it's like a more challenging from a technical perspective. And sometimes that tech leaks out in a way that the user sees it. Like, oh, and you got to save this key, or oh, you got to whatever nerdy thing they have to do in order to use it. And so we were trying to do it without any of that. So just like be better, faster, simpler, quicker, get you the link right away, not at the end of the upload, all that kind of stuff. And then hopefully that's like, they perceive that as being, just way better. And then also icing on the cake, it's end-to-end encrypted. We can't see your data, in that order. Yeah.
It's like, trust me for sure on that last part. You mentioned your love for Mozilla Send. Did you talk to any of the team around that? Did you see any statistics on the usage of that? I'm just curious, like, how often do people send files without storing them? So I use Dropbox in the sense that I already store my things there and just share them because it's there. Mm-hmm. Less on like, oh, I want to share this file with this person arbitrarily or just out of nowhere. What is the statistics on this world? Like, how big is the send files to other people? Where I imagine kind of big, but then you got the whole, you might be sharing some, what was that? You said scurvy websites, Jared, or just something like that. Like you might be sending some shady things, who knows? What's the space like? And, did you talk to anybody at Firefox or Mozilla Send from that team around what they did or what they didn't do, or
I never actually spoke with anyone on the team. I probably should have to learn a little bit more. I wanted to, but yeah, never got around to it. I think, I mean, files are fundamentally how data works on all operating systems. Like they're going to be with us forever. But I do have to say though, like, you know, on mobile devices, they're not really exposed in the same way to the user. So files are kind of dying, you know, in some sense. Like I bet if you, I don't have kids or anything, but like I bet if you ask like an average kid, like, you know, what is a file? And if only used like iOS or something, they might not even know what a file
they
is.
won't. Yeah.
So that is kind of concerning in terms of like the future of growing for Wormhole. So that's partially why you know, we're thinking about expanding into other types of things besides files. Like, what if we could do end-to-end encrypted photos? You know, what if you could have a photo library that was really fast and as good or better than other services? But we do everything in your browser, you know, including like the detection of what's, you know, in the photos, all the AI stuff you can do with WebAssembly in your own browser. And then once you can attach that metadata to your photo library and upload that into the cloud. But the cloud never sees what's in that library. So the cloud is just this dumb hard drive that's far away from you that you stick stuff on, but it doesn't actually do anything that involves seeing your data. So that's kind of probably where we'll go with it, because yeah, I mean, right now files are still used in a lot of places. Like developers, creators especially, actually are using photos a ton, or files a lot, because, you know, they still work with raw video and photos and that kind of stuff. And all the apps still, it's all on desktop.
And you got a large send too. It's like 10 gigs is the max file size right now.
Yeah.
So that's gotta be a thing. Do you plan to be Dropbox like at some point? What's the horizon? What's the outlook?
Yeah, that's another direction that we're thinking about. So building a drive, like where you can put all your files permanently instead of just what we do now, which is store 24 hours. Yeah, that's a thing people keep asking for. They're like, I want to use Wormhole for
That's
permanent
where it
storage.
takes significant investment, because that's a lot of long-term storage. You know, you got, you know, probably some assurances there, probably some sort of
Backups.
agreement that, you know, your files won't be lost. You know, this
Yeah.
isn't long-term storage. However, it is, you know, storage in general, so it should stay there and not go away.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of
Yeah.
overhead, so to speak, when it comes to storing long-term files.
Yeah. Right
Not to-
now we're. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to ask I'll just ask, not to ask you about a product you haven't built yet, but how would you even do key management with something like that?
I mean, it's hard. It's way harder. So like we took that's the thing about the current thing we did, is we actually have the easiest problem in the world, because the link is the password, and then, you know, if you lose it, okay, whatever. It was only going to be stored for 24 hours anyway. You weren't like putting your most precious files in here and guaranteeing that, you know, I'm going to download them when there's like 1 hour left or something. You know, it's inherently ephemeral, so it's not a huge deal if you lose the key, or if we lose your files, which we're not going to try to do, but, you know, if we did, it's still not the end of the world. So things get way harder when you're like trying to provide a permanent drive. I think like the model that we would follow would be something like 1Password. If you've ever used 1Password, they have a browser version now, and it does all the encryption, all the end-to-end encryption in the browser. And they have sort of this user experience that they walk you through, where you save an emergency kit, which is like a PDF with like a key on it, and they have a combination of the secret key that you can't memorize with the password, the master password that you do memorize, and the two together make this like really strong key. And that's a thing that I think they've done a really good job of like explaining to normal users in a way that it makes sense, but it's also still a pretty smooth user experience. And so if we did something like that, then that offline emergency kit that you print out would be like your backup, and we could hopefully still have a pretty decent user experience. But that is a case where, yeah, that's going to be harder. That's going to be harder to set up than like just making an account with some service and just having them be able to reset your password at any time. Like that is just fundamentally going to be a worse or a harder user experience. But hopefully there's other benefits that make it better. I mean, in the case of 1Password, people are willing to put up with it, because that's the thing where they really don't want the provider to see their passwords to everything, you know, their banks and their files in every single website on the internet. So it's worth it. So that's kind of the idea. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I use 1Password and have put up with that. And
Yeah.
I don't have to put up with it often, which is great. Like it's pretty much just like, I don't know if it does some kind of like local syncing through iCloud or something between like all of my devices with that stuff, but it's pretty simple to set up, and it's overall like a pretty simple solution to this problem. So yeah, I like it.
Yeah. You know, the reason why they do the secret key in addition to the password, do you know why they do that?
Security.
Correct.
Yeah, that is correct. That is actually correct. It's because you know, in the past, 1Password was purely local on your device, and so even if you picked a crappy master password, in order for you to get successfully hacked or whatever, someone would have to first steal your database for your 1Password, where it stores the files. They would have to steal that database, and then they would have to guess, try passwords and try to break in. So that's like 2 steps, right? But then once they started with the cloud stuff, now they have everyone's databases sitting on their server. And so if your password is hello123, right, that means that they could, 1Password themselves could, if they turned evil, like try all the common passwords, and like hello123 would be very easy to guess. And so to help people who have like terrible passwords, they combine that with a secret key that is like completely long and randomly generated, and the two together like are guaranteed to be strong, because the key is guaranteed to be strong on its own. So your password just adds extra.
That's smart.
Yeah. And then the problem with that is then
Assault.
yeah, exactly. Your password's just an extra little bit of fluff at the end of the true password, which is the key. But then you have the other problem, which is that users can't remember the key, so that the app remembers it the first time you type it in, and then you just use your password as a practical day-to-day kind of unlock of of the app. So it's a really cool design. It kind of solves all the problems that you would worry about with the cloud service.
And they've been committed to that for a while too. I've been a 1Password user probably, I want to say at least a decade, at least, probably longer than that. So I mean, they've been committed to that goal, which hopefully, you and Socket Inc. and Wormhole has a similar aspiration to be committed to this goal of what you're saying here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One more question related to this potential future product, but you're very much web first with this, and I assume that that's kind of an aspirational goal going forward too. So things like that key, like that randomly generated key that would be attached to your password, if you were going to do something like that, is that something that's safe to store in local storage?
Yeah, it should be. I mean, if it's stored in local storage, then it means it is probably accessible to other apps on the machine, which I guess is a weaker guarantee than I think 1Password might do something like storing it in the secure enclave if your device has some kind of hardware place to store stuff. I'm not actually sure. So that might not be accessible through web. I would have to check. That is a good point. Yeah, it's probably a fine place to store it, but I'm not exactly sure what guarantees how it compares to 1Password. So I'd have to look into it.
I know 1Password has that like 1Password X, which is like just the extension, and maybe that offers some extra security, like being an extension versus just being like a web app. But if not that, then presumably they're storing it somewhere like local storage.
You're right. I mean, and they even let you log in like just purely with the web browser without any extension. And then the next time you come back to log in, you only have to type in your password. So the key is being stored somewhere in your browser storage. Yeah. My general thoughts are, if it's good enough for 1Password, it's probably going to be good enough for us, because they've been iterating on that for a while. So it's really inspiring to see them do it, because then okay, well, yeah. I mean, it worked for a password manager, so it's probably a similar threat model as files.
Seems like there's iterative steps you can take between here and there with regards to Wormhole as it stands, which is drag and drop a file into a web app and then copy the link and share it. and what we're talking about, hypothetical future product, which is like a full-on drive, Dropbox end-to-end encrypted replacement with files, in storage. One example would be some sort of a desktop integration, similar to what Dropbox does, but not having to store the files in a synced drive. Like you could have a right-click share on Wormhole, and then it would just upload the file that you clicked on, right, and get you that link immediately. And you kind of feel like, I mean, that's when it comes to Dropbox. There's kind of two features there. There's the backup with the syncing across your devices, which is kind of acts as a backup, and then the sharing, the collaboration. And you can get the collaboration pretty easily and make it feel more like something that you're using more regularly, or you could just have a file on disk and right click and share it without having to actually do the crazy stuff we're talking about. Like, not crazy, but the heavy lift of what you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fun fact, we're actually a PWA right now. So what that means is you can, if you're using the right browser, you can install Wormhole as an app on your computer. And if you're doing it on the right platform, because it's not on all the platforms yet, then you can click. Yeah, I know. You can right click and select share on Wormhole, and it'll actually do what you described. So right now,
cool.
if you're on Android and you install Wormhole as an app to your home screen on Android, then that means it'll get added to the share menu. So anywhere on Android, if you have a file, you can get a Wormhole link from it in a couple taps.
That is
and
cool.
On Windows too. I think Windows, if you use Edge to install it, then you get the same thing.
What's the holdup on iOS? Because there's PWAs and there's also ShareSheet integration, but maybe not. Maybe they don't talk to each other.
Don't get me started on iOS.
Or do.
It sounds like you haven't got started on iOS.
iOS is the worst browser by far for Safari on iOS is the worst browser by far for web development, and I'm sure anyone who's a web developer knows this. It's just like not just in terms of support of web features, but just in terms of even bugs, like in basic features that should be working good. It's just a disaster. I don't say this lightly. Like but it's really bad. Like as an example, they completely broke IndexedDB in the last version of Safari. Like literally, it doesn't work. Like a basic web feature that's been in their browser for like 2-3 years, they just shipped it where if you call open indexedb.open, it doesn't work. Nothing happens. The promise never returns. And then the workaround is we figured out apparently they're doing some kind of lazy loading where the first time IndexedDB in your app, it starts up a process, but it loses that first call that you make while that process is starting up. So anyway, the trick is you have to just say IndexedDB somewhere in your app, like at the top of the file. And then later on, when you say indexedb.open, then by that point, the process has, and then that second call will work. It's like, what? Like, and then they ship that, right? And then I made a fuss about it on Twitter. I'm like, guys, Safari literally just broke IndexedDB. And then and then like all the Chrome people were like, because they actually have a really good Twitter presence. They were like in their replies like, what? Are you guys okay over there in Cupertino? Are you doing all right? You'd think a test would catch this, like a basic test. Like, does it work? Anyway, so then they fixed it, right? But like then you're like, when are you guys gonna release this? And then they comment on the issue tracker. Apple does not comment on future releases. It's like, okay, so now we're just everyone has to assume this is not going to make it until the next major version of Safari. So we're dealing with this bug for the next year. They just broke a basic feature and they're not going to hotfix it. It's like actively, like if you had to imagine, what could you do to sabotage the web? Like it would not look very different than what Apple is doing. Like say you support standards, right? But then actually subtly break them all the time, right? I mean, I'm not saying this was on purpose, but I'm just saying it's not that different in effect in the effect it's having on the web than if they were trying to sabotage it. I know they're not trying to, but that's just the effect that it's having.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to tabs, they are doing that in iOS 15. So.
I'm not.
Nick, too soon.
I'm running
Not
the
even
betas,
out yet.
so I'm feeling the pain.
Yeah. No, don't run betas.
I've heard, but I have not seen personally myself the tab
I'm just hoping it's
snafu.
fixed by the time the thing ships. Well, don't get me
I heard-
started on Apple Podcasts because they've completely destroyed podcasts. And there's a bug in iOS 14.6 which destroyed downloads for every podcaster in June and up to up to now because they haven't released the fix for it. They've confirmed the bug. It basically breaks downloads, so like a bunch of our listeners just aren't getting our shows. And it can be fixed someday, soon, here, real soon. So
I heard that
mean-
you move fast and break things in the valley.
Yeah. So anyway, Safari is just I don't know what's going on there. And honestly, I
Which is
I
terrible
think-
because iOS is so prevalent. There's so many people out there using this really expensive device they think is state of the art, which it is as a device. But then the device is only as good as the software it runs, and in many cases, I replace Apple software for the most part. I don't use Mail. I don't use specific things, and I'm just moving away from more and more of those things. And if you can't trust Safari, which I believe they even gate which browser you can put on the iOS device, anyways, right? Like they're all really based on Safari, even though it's a Chrome.
the rendering engine.
Right, exactly. So like
That's what
there's
peop-
something in there that's like always Apple.
people need to know that too. I think that's not a widely known fact, but every browser on iOS that is not Safari is just a skin, basically a skin on top of Safari. That's the way to think about it. It's like a UI on top of WebKit, which is Safari. And so even though when you think you have choice and you're like, oh, I'm going to install Chrome, like you're basically just doing that for the bookmarks, syncing, and whatever other Chrome, things like that. But you're the features that the Apple team decides to ship in their browser, and there's no alternative. And I don't know. It means that there's no competition. I mean, they can just do this. They can just break the browser, and then they can say, we don't have a monopoly on the App Store because you can always make a website. They actually, in this antitrust case in Australia, they actually, in their defense, they mentioned that you could use PWAs as an alternative to the App Store. So you can actually make a website that's as good as an app, they claim. But then they fail to mention that they're also in control of what features you can put into your PWA and what things they're going to support. So they don't support notifications. They don't support like a storage system that makes sense. They just break it randomly. So yeah, it's not really a true alternative.
Back to the security though, I think one of the reasons they make this choice, or at least they claim they make this choice around WebKit and other browsers being formed around WebKit, is usually they'll say it's a security reason, or it's for they're so focused on privacy. What do you think?
I mean, that's a fake reason.
Well, you can't break IndexedDB and say we did it for security.
Yeah,
well, maybe not
I mean,
break it next DB, but maybe you can limit the fact that you can only use WebKit. If for some reason it's a security reason, or it's a privacy reason.
I think it's true. Yeah, if you don't, I mean, to some extent, it's true. Like,
Yeah.
if you prevent the kind of fast, like the JIT compiler, basically is what they specifically prevent, and that's why like no browser wants to ship a browser because it wouldn't be able to be fast because the JavaScript engine wouldn't be able to do just-in-time compilation. That's my understanding of why no browsers actually bothered to browser, because it would just suck if they did. So by banning that, like, I guess there's like some theoretical security benefit to that. But I would argue that like the true benefit, the true security like in iOS doesn't come from like Apple reviewing things and deciding what code gets in and out of the store. Sure, that is one thing, but like the true benefit comes from the other like 1,000 things that the OS does, like sandboxing the app, preventing the app from just reading and writing files in random places, making it so the app only can touch its own files, and making it so that all the sensitive APIs have to go through these OS calls that bring up prompts for the user that ask if the user wants to do that before it happens. And all that stuff happens at the OS level. So even if an app was like malicious, the iOS sandbox would do a pretty dang good job by itself of keeping you safe, I think.
In 2 minutes, let's say, give me an answer on this. If the WebKit / Apple team / iOS team, somebody out there who cares about, let's say, the future of the web and all these things, they were listening, how would you fix iOS to be better, more PWA friendly, better web developer friendly, what would you fundamentally change about the way they're doing things?
I mean, probably faster releases would be the number one thing, because there's all these things that you can see that are, that are in master on WebKit, but you have no idea when they're going to be released. And usually that means it's going to be a year. So I think faster releases would help a lot.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, just like deciding, I mean, yeah, I guess deciding to, if they want to use the web as like their defense against why they're not a monopoly, then they should make sure that the web has all the features that the native platforms have, or else it's not a true defense. So, I mean, that's not really a thing that the WebKit engineers can decide. It's more of like a Apple strategy thing, but
Right.
yeah.
Well, at least they can petition, right? If they care about their jobs, when they're doing, and they have enough passion, they can either keep doing it under that guise or fight back and say, listen, this is the way we have to really open up the opportunities for web on iOS.
Mm-hmm.
There's a choice there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Well, I'll just quote Steve Jobs when he said, "We have a very sweet solution for you. They're called web apps." Remember back before the App Store existed? He put that big slide on the screen there, and he said, "Here's our solution for apps on iPhone OS back then." It was really sweet solution, is what he said. Web apps. So for us, they've been committed to web apps before the App Store existed. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to turn this into me ranting only about Safari. I think that the engineers on Safari are great, and they're doing the best they can do with the sort of limitations that they're given by the structure they're in, I think.
I think the reason why you got into this position, though, with this in quotes rant, as you said, is because we're speculating about the future possibilities of Wormhole, right? We got there by talking about the opportunities of files and iOS and that kind of thing, and so that led us down that road of talking about the different ways you can, utilize Wormhole on an Android device, installed as an app, and the features you get from that, or the flip side, iOS. So I mean, that's where I think we're at. And any entrepreneur is gonna have some speculation about the future of the thing they're building. And Jared's question to you is, why are you doing this? And then Nick and I are asking you, what's the long term of Wormhole? Is it going to be Dropbox like? Is it going to be drive driven? How could you do that technically? So I think these are all valid concerns, because someone like you, who, in my opinion, seems so forward thinking about the technologies that power the web, you're going to want to push the boundaries. And if you can't push the boundaries on one of the most prevalent platforms out there, then you're going to not do it. And that's not innovation.
Yeah, it's definitely holding back innovation. That's for sure. Yeah. I mean, I still have an iPhone, which I'm, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't. Yeah, no, I mean, it is the thing that makes me the saddest about it, is the browser. I really, as someone who loves the web, I mean, I probably should just get an Android device. But I'm too hooked into the ecosystem that even after all that ranting, I feel like I still have to have an iPhone. So what does that tell you?
But I
Got
do
you
think
right
that
where they want you.
I do think the WebKit engineers do care about the web, and I think that they are working on it. And it seems like more and more lately, they seem pretty active on Twitter, like talking about things and being open and being on podcasts. They were on a podcast for the Changelog, I think, a while back.
Yeah, we've had a
which is
couple
good.
a couple of engineers on the show, and I've always been very impressed with them personally, both their intellect, their obvious knowledge of the space, and their what seems to me to be sincere desire to make the web better. So,
But that
that's always
desire boots up against the services revenue.
yeah, it does. It totally does.
Yeah, and I don't think that it's like the decisions of the team. Well, okay. So to be fair, there is probably some difference between the way that the WebKit team sees the role of the web. I think they're much more in the camp of it should be a document viewer. Not like they don't literally think it should be a document viewer only, but they're more on that side than the Chrome team, which thinks that it should be a super powerful application platform that can access all the device's sensors and do all the things, right? And so you see this in their decision to not implement, the Bluetooth API or various other really privileged APIs that Chrome and Edge are fine implementing. So there is some philosophical difference there that I don't think is just about resources, to be fair.
Let's break right here. we've taken our first break.
I was wondering if we're gonna break it all.
Yeah, that
Well,
was
put
like
it in the
super,
Keep rolling with it.
I put it in the chat. You guys don't see the chat?
I wasn't looking
About
at
10
it.
minutes ago. I'm like, we need a break, guys.
Uh,
So we're
I
42
just
minutes
saw the
in.
chat a minute ago and I didn't see this, so I just saw the Riverside chat and I was like, I ignored chat at that point. So I was like,
Yeah, it's all right. It's
There's
not
no
very like
breaks.
it should be more obvious. It should like popcorn
Oh,
toast
yeah.
you guys.
yeah, like a
So
broadcast or something.
this will be our only break. Well, we'll splice one in for the first break. So this is actually our
All
second
right.
break. And let's get into the tech, shall we?
Sure, yeah. I
Anybody-
feel like it turned into an Apple rant. I didn't.
It did.
It did.
That's why I
the
said, don't
biggest-
get me. I was like, don't get me
Don't-
started. I
But
knew-
that's
Yeah,
why.
and then we got you
captured
started.
The reasons why. I mean, there were validated reasons why. I mean, I think
Yeah.
when we ask you about the speculation of the future, it's only natural to consider what platforms are strapping you. You know,
yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
a significant platform in this
Yeah.
country, right?
Mhm.
It is.
I would
for
totally
the same reason that
scrutinize my future.
we
if they
all
were.
carry them. You know.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I think it's fair. It's all fair. It's. Yeah. I think you basically have to build an app if you want iOS. That's just the truth.
Right.
So-
Hmm.
and that's a decision that they made. That they're kind of. I mean, it definitely helps them that that's the way it is. I don't know if it was intentional. It seems intentional. But
Yeah. All right. Well, does anybody need to step away or take a break, or we just hop right in and close out with how it works, technology stack?
Solid.
Let's go. So we've talked a little bit about how Wormhole works with regards to the sharing of the URL, the key being put in, I think it's called the fragment identifier, after the fragment identifier in the URL.
Mhm.
A little bit about how those things work. You mentioned it's peer-to-peer insofar as WebTorrent's involved, but can you break down give us all the gory details, like what technology, JavaScript libraries you're using, from the ground up, how does Wormhole work?
Sure. So we're using a bunch of fun things to make it work. Let's see. Where do I start, though? There's a lot of directions we could go. Let's see. Well,
Are you using TypeScript?
no, I wish we were. No, we actually might switch to it because we're working on I'm on a team now with like 2 other people and maybe even growing. By the way, we're hiring.
Sounds like a
But so
fun job.
yeah, it does help to have TypeScript in those kinds of environments versus like when you're just hacking by yourself. So I'm seriously considering it. Which
How
is
about Neo?
the
then?
most
Can
I've-
we get you? No, sorry, that's off topic.
Yeah, so I think if you're familiar with WebTorrent, that's probably a good place to start because that is the underpinnings of the way that the file transfer stuff works. So maybe I'll just quickly explain that for people who aren't familiar. So when you use the WebTorrent library, this is an implementation of BitTorrent. The key idea about how that works is you take a file or a set of files, and you want to produce this like torrent file, which is like basically a metadata file. And what's in there is a list of the file names, and then their hashes, effectively, like a hash of each of the files is a way to think about it. And what's cool about that is that means now I can share this like metadata file with people, and they can now accept file pieces and then reconstruct them together on their computer, hash the file, and then compare it to the hash that they were expecting. And then if it's the same, then they know that they got the file they wanted. And they don't have to trust the person sending them the file. So we use that for the file transfer part of Wormholes. Like when you send that link out to somebody, that share link, they're actually downloading the file pieces from your browser and using the whole sort of the torrent protocol under the hood, which means you get like nice behavior like swarming. So if you have like 3 or 4 people trying to download this, the downloaders can actually share the partial file pieces with each other, and that all just comes for free from using WebTorrent. So that makes it faster, right? It means that like you're not the bottleneck as the uploader sending the same file 5 times to 5 people. You can send like this piece to that person, another piece to this other person, and then they can share amongst themselves, which is a nice like another little performance benefit. Yeah. So that's WebTorrent. And then we layer on top the end-to-end encryption. So what we do is before we put the files into WebTorrent, before we create that torrent file, we have to end-to-end encrypt the file using a key that we generate on. And so for that, we use the Web Crypto API, which is this built-in browser API that lets you do things like generate keys, make secure random numbers, hash things. All that stuff is just built into the browser. So we use that to, we implemented this streaming encryption, and that was based off of the Firefox Send design. We just sort of copied, they made an RFC and explained how this thing works, and we sort of just said, oh, that's great, that's exactly what we want. So we implemented the same RFC that they published. And it's streaming, which means that we don't need to have the entire files in memory in one big buffer in order to work on the file. So what we can do is we can actually read it in a little bit at a time from your drive, and then encrypt it as we go. And so there's this huge pipeline that's going on. So first we read it in from your disk, then we encrypt a piece of it, then we feed it into WebTorrent, which produces hashes of the data that it's consuming, and then in parallel, we're also, that entire pipeline is going up to the cloud and uploading to our storage systems as well. Because the link we want the link to work even if you close your browser, so we also store a copy of it for 24 hours so your link works. So that's all happening in parallel. And at the end of that, you end up with a file, this torrent file that describes what is in that share link. And then we encrypt that as well and upload that to the cloud. So what the cloud sees is we have this set of encrypted files that you've uploaded to us, and then we have this metadata file that's also encrypted. That means we can't see the file names or even the sizes of any of the files or anything like that. It's just all in this big blob. And that's basically what happens on the uploader side. Any questions?
I do have a question, but I'm not sure exactly how to ask it. You said that there's a pipeline, which I understand, is take the file, read it in from the operating system, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you're getting the file read in, you're creating the torrent for it. While, I guess the order of operations, what I don't understand. You're doing three things. You're torrenting it, you're encrypting it, and you're uploading it to your cloud servers. You said those are in parallel? Or what order does that?
First we have to encrypt it. And then after that, we take the encrypted data that's coming out of that stream and we upload it to the cloud, and we feed it through the thing that creates a torrent file. So all that thing does is it just sort of reads the data in and then hashes it and produces this list of hashes. That's what I mean by create a torrent. It's not actually sharing it with anybody yet. It's just producing the metadata file that describes what you're sharing.
And that torrent file isn't really ready for sharing until it has the entire manifest, right? It has to have all of the information before it's actually useful.
Yes. This is one limitation of torrents that we probably switch away from WebTorrent at some point, but for now it was the sort of quickest way to get something working in a secure way. But that is one limitation that we have to sort of deal with. Is a torrent is immutable, which means it can't change, which means it has to get in all the files have to be read into it. And then when you're done, then it's sort of finalized, and you can't add files to it easily. You can't remove files from it. It is what it is. And if you want to make even any change to it, then all the hashes change. The whole thing has to change, which means you got to read everything in again. Mm-hmm. So it's not very good for modifying. That is one limitation of our design right now.
Why would you, just curious about because I have a side question to this, but why would you go through the encryption and then upload to your 24-hour hot seat, so to speak, and then not actually web torrent it first? Why wouldn't your client essentially, your cloud essentially be essentially a client to the web torrent?
Well, we could do that.
What's the limitations there? Is it simply just speed, or is it simply? I just wonder why the reasoning is for that. And then also later on, does your long-term or your 24-hour storage act as a client of, and I'm probably not speaking perfect WebTorrent terms, so correct me where that's necessary, but does that end up being, one of the places that you pull from? So you said swarming, if you've got 5 people out there, does your 24-hour hot seat act as one of those people or act as one of those endpoints?
Yeah, it's great questions. Totally great questions. So the reason that we can't just have the cloud storage be a peer that downloads the files, is that we're using Backblaze for our storage backend. They have this thing called Backblaze B2, which is kind of like Amazon S3. It's just a place to stash some file data, and we could like do that like put stuff into those buckets like ourselves. But what we do for like efficiency and also for cost reasons is we just give the client, the uploader, we give them a key that they can use to directly upload into Backblaze from their browser. And so that prevents us being in the middle of that. So they have a key that we give them that like authorizes them to write into a specific bucket, a specific folder in our Backblaze storage, and they upload all the data into it directly from their browser. So for that reason, it just has to use plain HTTP because I mean Backblaze doesn't understand torrents, so the client has to just upload it into there. And we could make it go through us, but like why introduce extra steps? Why do we want to have all that bandwidth going through us and have our bandwidth costs go even higher for no gain? So we just tell the client to do that. And then your other question was like on the downloader side, does the downloader treat the cloud, this Backblaze cloud, as yet another peer? And it does. So it's that uses this thing that torrents can do called the web seed, which is basically a peer that is an HTTP server. So it's not speaking the torrent protocol. It's just a server that has some files on it. But your torrent client can treat it as a peer. So it can be like, oh, that's a peer that has everything. It has the whole file already torrented because it's sitting on a server there. And then you can just treat it as yet another peer. So maybe it gets some data from these peers, and then it sees, oh, these peers are kind of slow. Let me go grab data from the server peer, and it's a big hybrid model where it can get some from the server, some from the peers, depending on the network conditions that it's experiencing.
That's a pretty cool feature. So take us to the receiving end now. Okay, you went to wormhole.app. You put a file in there. You got your URL immediately, right? Let's say it's a 10 gig file, max file size. And so you're sitting there, you're still uploading it, but you sent me that link right away. I go post that link into my browser. What do I see? Stand by. We're downloading.
Yeah. So the first thing is that the URL contains two pieces. It contains the room ID is what we call it. It's just an ID for the files that identifies the files, and then it contains that secret key that's not sent to the server. So you make a request to the server for that room ID. It tells you, yeah, there's a room here, but I'm not going to tell you anything about the room until you prove that you have the key. So even though everything, like I said, is end-to-end encrypted, you could imagine like we could have designed it so like if you show up and you say, hey, I know there's a room with this ID, give me the files for it, please. We could have just said, sure, here you go, because we know they're encrypted. We're not worried about about your data getting out there. But we don't want to even give a copy, even of the encrypted files, out to random people. So we add this extra layer of security where you as the downloader, you take the secret key that's in the URL up there, you take that, and you derive a new key from it. So this is a way to sort of take a key and make a subkey, and it's, how do I describe it? It's basically, all you need is that main key, and then you can always get to the subkey. You can always deterministically produce the same subkey. And but given the subkey, you can't go back to the master key. So what you do is
kind of thing.
it's kind of like you can think kind of like that. Yeah, there's no way to tell that they're related either. They're completely unrelated. So as far as the person looking at the two keys can tell. And so then what you do with that is you show that to the server. And the server, by the way, the uploader did this originally. The uploader produced the subkey and told the server the subkey. And so now the downloader does the same thing. They produce the subkey, and then they can show that to the server, and the server's like, you must have the master key. So I'll go ahead and provide you, I'll answer all your API requests. So you need that to do anything. We call it a reader token because it sort of authorizes you to do all the sort of, you can read basically everything about the room if you can prove that you have that token. Or that subkey. So then we're not going to answer anyone's API requests unless they actually do have the true URL. But we also don't need, as a server, we don't need the URL to know that you have, we don't need the key to know that you have the key, kind of.
Yeah, you got the room ID plus this sub key. Is
Mm-hmm.
is this formalized? Is this like a thing that has a name, or is this something y'all came up with? I mean, it sounds
It's
like a
yeah, it's a thing. It's just called deriving deriving a key from another key. I'm not sure there's another name for it, but
okay.
that's how we call it. What we call it.
So I have my room ID and my derived key as the requester.
Mhm.
And if I don't have that derived key or it doesn't match, you're not gonna say anything to me, like
Mhm.
you know, GTFO or whatever. And if I have the sub key, the uploader person, they had both the private key, which is in the URL fragment, and they created the sub key as well. And since those are deterministic, they're the same.
Mhm.
But you can't go from the sub key back to the master key, so you're still on the server side. All you know is this is the person that is trusted. You don't know anything else, and you
Yeah.
can't actually decrypt that information, even
Yep.
though I can because I have the.
You have the
key.
master key. Yep, exactly.
Well, that's cool.
Yep.
So then the
Similar-
file, let's say the file's not there yet though. So I've proven to you, hey, Faraz sent me this URL. I got the key right here, the sub key, and you're like, hey, this is the room. You got the sub key. What's up? But the file's not ready. Is it just like, you know, while one sleep for a second and check again, or what happens?
Yeah, it's kind of like that actually. Not even kidding.
'Cause that's how I would do it.
Yeah, it checks every 5 seconds to
Okay.
see if. So right now we have this is another limitation from using torrents that we're gonna work around once we switch to something that's custom. But right now, like I said, we need that full metadata file. We need that torrent file in order to start doing anything, because that's just how torrents work. You need to kind of have that. That tells you how to make requests and how to validate that the file data you got back is what you expected. So the downloader is sitting there waiting for that encryption process to finish on the uploader side. So it needs to fully like read everything, encrypt it, and that long, and it takes like, you know, maybe a minute at most if it's 10 gigs. So it's not too bad. But during that time, that the downloader is just sitting there waiting for the link. The nice thing is the link works. They can click the link, and they don't got to worry about, oh, the link isn't ready or something. The link is ready. It's just the browser's going to sit there waiting for that torrent file. And once it's available, then the server provides it to them, and then they decrypt it locally using the master key that they have. And now they can look inside and be like, these are the files I'm going to download. So now at that point, we can show the user in the UI, we can show them the list of files that they're going to be able to download. And at that point, they can also start to connect to the sender using WebTorrent. So it's a peer-to-peer connection. They can connect directly to them and start to download stuff. And meanwhile, the uploader is still maybe uploading stuff into the cloud, but who cares? Because we're connected directly to the person with the files, and we can just get whatever we want right away.
Cloud's just a backup in that case, right? It's just meant to be once it's fully uploaded, if that peer goes down, then the cloud becomes the primary.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. And then all the requests that the downloader makes from the seeder are all for encrypted data. So the data needs to be decrypted as it comes out of the torrent. So everything inside there is also encrypted, so that you got to basically feed it through that. There's a decryption stream that can kind of decrypt the data, and we support sort of like decrypting at any point too, which is really cool. So that means that we can have a video tag on the page, and if you seek to like halfway through the video, that causes WebTorrent to realize, we don't need the pieces at the beginning, we need the pieces in the middle, and your browser will make requests for those pieces that it knows the video tag needs, and it'll get the encrypted data, and that encrypted data is halfway through the encrypted like file, and yet we can still figure out how to decrypt that based on how it's designed.
Interesting.
And yeah, so you decrypt it from the middle, because sometimes some encryption doesn't work that way. Some encryption is like just you need to start at the
back.
beginning.
Yeah.
Start at the beginning. Yeah, you can't jump into the middle, but we can jump into the middle and then decrypt it and then play it back for you. And that's all done using a service worker, which is another kind of cool trick. So we basically, what we do is we make like a video tag and make the source of it being like an HTTP URL for an actual server on the internet. We make it a specific URL that we know that our service worker is going to intercept. And the service worker sees that, and it's like, that's a request for some data from this torrent. So it intercepts it, and then it basically provides exactly what the range that video tag is asking for. And so that means that you can sort of seek around, and it'll just magically sort of make the right range requests. The service worker will see those ranges. It'll ask the main page to say WebTorrent, hey, get me these ranges, and then WebTorrent will either peers or whatever and get those ranges, provide it back to the service worker, and the service worker feeds it back into the video tag. If that makes
This is
sense.
crazy.
So the
Yeah.
service worker is like a proxy between your video element in your HTML and your web torrent.
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Because see, the video tag is designed. There's like two ways you can use the video tag. You either provide a HTTP URL. That's the normal way. You've probably used it before. And the other way is this thing that was designed for YouTube style, like adaptive streaming. Do you know what adaptive streaming is? It's like when the video quality changes and you're watching Netflix, and then suddenly you get like it lowers the quality or it raises the quality. That's a thing that like these video streaming services needed, and so they made a special API where you can like, if you're Netflix, you can sort of monitor how the download is going. So you make these. So instead of just Netflix doesn't just do video source equals whatever TV show. It doesn't just do video source equals some URL, and that's the whole episode of whatever you're watching, right? They do something fancier. What they do is they use the fetch API to fetch a little chunk of the video, right? And then they monitor the like speed of that. Oh, is that going well? Is that slow or is that fast? If it's going fast, then they can be like, all right, the next piece we ask is going to be higher quality because this person's internet's fast enough. We can actually ask for a better quality piece for the next 5 seconds of this video. So then they ask for a better quality one, and then they need a way for the video tag to sort of stitch the different qualities together. This is called the media source API. And it's just designed to let these services basically do this thing where you can kind of like take different MP4 files and sort of make them seamlessly play as if they were one. And even though the details of the file are changing, the resolution's changing, the quality is changing. So that's one way we could do it. We could have done that and sort of use that same API to sort of get these blobs of video data and then feed them into the video tag with like an API where we just say, here's the next piece, here's the next piece. But the problem with that API is that it expects the files to be in a very specific like format. You have to kind of produce the MP4 files in a very specific way with specific options that you pass to FFmpeg or whatever you're using to make your videos. And most files that you just you find on the internet, like random videos that are on your computer, are not going to be designed in this specific way for streaming. And so that means that if we try to use this approach, it kind of fails. And so that's why what we need to do is we want to use the first approach where we just do video source equals and then HTTP URL, because then the browser can just sort of treat it like any other file that it finds on the internet. It can just sort of make requests for different parts of it. And then all we got to do is be the service worker and just intercept those requests and be like, oh, here's the data you need. And then we don't have to do anything. We don't have to do anything special. We don't have to convert your file. We don't have to process it. We don't have to tell you, well, we can't play that kind of file. So we can support anything the video tag supports, even like MKVs and like weird .move, dot whatever. I don't know, all the different extensions that the video tag supports. We don't have to have like special code to process different types of files or anything like that.
That's cool. So that service worker approach lets you treat it like a URL, but you're still doing the client-side decryption.
Yes.
Without you ever having to know any of the metadata about the file that's actually being transferred.
Yes, correct.
That's cool. Okay.
And we do it in a way where the URL that's requested is like it's a random ID. So the way it works is the video tag has like it says like slash download stream or whatever thing that we're going to intercept slash and then a random ID. And the service worker sees that request and then it asks all the open wormhole tabs. It says, which one of you was responsible for this URL request, this random ID? And then whichever tab was responsible responds and says, I was, and here's the data. And what's cool about that is if for some reason the service worker fails and it doesn't intercept that request, if it's, I don't know, somehow that request makes it to our server, which we don't want that to happen, but if it does, the server's not going to have the file data anyway because the URL is going to 404 because it's a fake URL. designed for the service worker to just to intercept it. But what's cool is even if it makes it to the server, the URL just contains a random ID that means nothing. So it doesn't leak your file name. It doesn't leak anything. It's just like, oh, someone's service worker failed. This doesn't happen often, but it can. And we just want to design it so that even in the failure mode, we don't learn anything about your files. Anyway, that's probably a lot of stuff. But does that kind of make sense? It's all
Yeah, man.
put together.
Fascinating.
It's fascinating. The only thing I'm over here wishing is I wish I could just look at this source code and just grok it for myself. But you've gone partially open source with this one. I know you have some open source stuff on your socket dev org. Looks like the Wormhole crypto is out there and some other stuff you had to build for this. But maybe someday we'll have a peek at the source code. Until then, we'll
Yeah.
just have to take your word for it.
That is the part I wish that I could give you a better answer for right now. Okay, here's the thing. I've open sourced everything I've ever worked on in my entire life, basically. It's all on my GitHub. And with this project, we wanted to make sure that it could be sustainable from the beginning because when you're hosting tons of files, we're paying bills like to Backblaze for this stuff. We're paying for servers. And if we grow to be like 10 times bigger, then that's a really meaningful amount of money that we're paying to host the service. And so we need to find some way to charge for something in order for this to be sustainable. So we're working on a pro plan right now that you'll be able to pay for that will give you extra features like larger files, customizable expiration time, so you could change it to be like 7 days or a month instead of just 24 hours, stuff like that. And then eventually we'll have maybe the drive features as well. And then you'll be able to store all your files for forever. But I'm just not sure yet, like if open sourcing it would somehow like be a problem like for the business.
Yeah.
And I don't want someone to just like make a clone of it and then say, I don't know, just
Yeah.
it somehow causes the whole thing to not make sense, and then we have to stop working on it. So it's just at this stage where you can't unopen source something. So just erring on the side of like, I open sourced the cryptography code so that the security community could take a look at it and make sure that there's no flaws. And we have a bug bounty program for that. So if you find any problems, you can make up to $1,000 finding bugs in that. And same thing with the Wormhole website itself. If you identify vulnerabilities in the Wormhole website, you can also make $1,000. So that's sort of the place we're at now. I honestly think we might end up just open sourcing it. It's just that I just wanted to be a little bit thoughtful about it and not just do it that way from day one. So I hope that makes sense. I just really want to make sure that it's a thing that we can keep doing going forward and not have this be like some kind of mistake from like some kind of strategic mistake that.
I think you're playing it smart, honestly. I don't think you should feel bad about not open sourcing it. I think Jared is a developer, and curiosity is what's asking for that, less about, hey, this should be. Because I think until you know this is secret sauce, it should just be secret sauce for you to figure that out. Because until you get the right partners involved, because if I haven't said it yet, I believe this thing could be a big thing. And I think it's a wise move to just ensure that the source code needs to be where it's at currently, so that any future investment, anything that could happen for the company can happen without being hindered. And then if it makes sense to be community driven and open source, then that's still a vehicle you can drive because you've been there before. It's not unopened to you because you didn't open the door. So I think it's a wise move.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, the only thing is I really wish that we could show people the code so they could have even more assurances that it's doing what we say it is. And, that's the part that I think we're going to try to solve by doing an audit. We're going to hire like an actual team of people who know what they're doing, who are, do security audits for a living to take a look at the code, which this is also what 1Password does because they're also closed source and they're security software. And so people need to know that the design, well, they do open source their design docs, which we've also done to some extent. We have information on our website about the design of the crypto. All the things I just talked about are all on the website. So the design is there, but the actual implementation itself, best we can do for now is to audit it, just like what 1Password does.
Well, you have told us your entire secrets. I mean, here on the show, you've told us exactly how it works, the entire workflow. It's a matter of having the smarts and the technology behind the scenes to put that together yourself. If somebody wanted to clone you, for example. So I mean, the idea is freely shared here today.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. That is totally true.
Well, ideas are darn near worthless. It's all about execution.
right.
And so you've got a good head start on anybody executing on this. It's very technically impressive. I think as an application, you you can't see any of that stuff, So like that's maybe the catch 22 with like simple products. It's like it's so simple for the end user, and that's beautiful. That's your goal, right?
Yeah.
But then kind of like it, can't- some of the stuff that's impressive is just like under the covers. And so super enjoyed you coming and sharing those things with us, because we are curious and interested and impressed with some of the hacks and the solutions that you've put together to get this thing done. I definitely think it could be big as well. I'm looking forward to where you take it from here. This is not like your other side projects, right? This is like a company, because you've had some side projects that you said this is a side project. The annoying website is not something that you were ever trying to monetize, I don't think. Maybe as ransomware, get your computer back.
Yeah, for sure.
But you're taking this one seriously, and so I think that is wise as well, is to take it slow, make your moves strategically. And like you said, you can't undo the open source. You can open source it at any point, but you can't unopen source it once it's out there. It's like putting toothpaste back into the bottle. It doesn't work.
Yeah, and from a tech standpoint, like it's been fascinating to hear about all of these hurdles that you've gone through to keep it web first, and these really creative solutions for doing that. Things like the service worker and crypto on the client side, and doing all of that, and storing the key in the, what'd you call it, Jared? The fragment, the web fragment part.
I call it the
That's-
fragment identifier. I'm not sure if that's a technical term, but it's close.
I think
Yeah.
it is.
Okay.
Just really, really intuitive, and really appreciative that you're showing the limits, not showing the limits, but you're showing the capabilities of the web without having to just say screw it and go with a native app or anything like that. So that's really cool.
You're making Steve Jobs proud with a really sweet solution.
I can really appreciate too, Frost, that you've been able to build upon what you've already put out there before.
Yeah.
Like this isn't zero. You're not starting from zero with this one. You're sort of layering on the things you've already given out there freely in open source, and you're also layering on your knowledge base or personal knowledge base to build this next big thing. I think that's really admirable. So congrats on that.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm working with two really cool people to build it out. So it's also like much more of a team effort than the other things I've worked on in the past. So because it's a real company, and they're the two people I'm working with are John and Alex, and they're both really great. Like really fun. It's fun to work. It's fun to be on a team and have another level of seriousness to a project, and have it be a company instead of just a side project. So that's been a really nice change of pace too.
So shout out to John and Alex. Thanks for letting Faraz skip stand up today so he could be here with us.
That's right.
That's all of our time. In fact, we probably spent more time than we usually do, but there's just so much to dig into. Plus, you can't stop a good Apple rant. Let it happen. Just let it happen. So we hope you all enjoyed that as well. Wormhole.app is the website. Faraz is hiring. Where's the contact there for people who are interested in getting involved, maybe from a hiring perspective? Where do they go?
So the company is called Socket, and our website is socket.dev. So if you go socket.dev, you can see there's an email there for hiring. We're looking for JavaScript. So if you're a JavaScript wizard or a security wizard, I guess the thing we put on the website is if you can make computers do things they're not supposed to do, then get in touch. So
There you
that's
go.
what we're looking for.
Sounds like a fun job to me. Adam, thanks for hanging out with us. Nick, it's always a pleasure. That's JS Party for this week, and we'll talk to you next time. Ooh, they fixed the media widget on the right-hand side last week. Once I switched to the
This
chat.
is a new outro.
Yeah, man, you like that? I thought it was a little better than the previous outro, which was like just ambient music. We're always upgrading things around here,
I saved this potential feature request / curiosity of where it might go for the after show, because it just might be good. Who knows? Curious if ever you plan to do, say, like a headless app via terminal or something like that, since you're so web first. Because like I was actually thinking I would love to share this via Wormhole right now, because I'm in my terminal,
Right.
and but then I was like, well, does for us is so developer, maybe there's a terminal app for it, maybe there's a CLI. No,
Cap the
there's
file,
not.
pipe it into wormhole.
And then after hearing so much for you being web first and all the different details, maybe it's just not possible yet. But I was thinking that that might be something that you eventually do, where you can sort of like, especially if you have a drive, you can maybe even your 24 hours, if you can purge what's there, you know, like if you can say, okay, I know you said you'll hold it for 24 hours, but I don't want you to. I want you to kill it right away, you know, because it's my file. I tell you what to do. Maybe I have a pro plan I can pay you, and I'm paying you, and you do what I say, app. But you know, whatever. I was just thinking like there would be some cool kind of hackery things that you could do in the terminal.
Yeah. So people have been asking to be able to curl files up, but if we did that, if we supported literally just curl, then we'd need to we'd be able to see the files, because you'd be like, you know, curl, like sending them to us, and then we would have to do the encryption. So we would need to do is make an actual full CLI where it could do the encryption directly in the terminal. So the main limitation right now is there's two things that we're doing that are web first that are not easy right now to do, or that we'll have to do something to fix, which is we're using the web crypt, which isn't available in Node, and we're using browser streams, the WhatWG streams, which are a different type of stream than Node streams. But I just saw, like literally yesterday, that Node, the latest version of Node 16, browser streams, or they call them web streams, in Node. I'll send you guys the link for that. But what that means is that you can use the same like readable stream and writable stream are available in Node that are the same as the browser. So that means that the only thing we're missing is web crypto. We just got to make a sort of like a shim or something that will that will call the Node crypto stuff behind the scenes.
I wonder
we'll be
if
able to do it.
I wonder if I was just doing a search, and I wonder if Dino might get there first. They have an open issue for it.
For web
But
crypto?
for web crypto, yeah. But the benefit of that would be that you can run Dino compile and then give a full executable binary to like ship that, instead of having to
Easy
have all of the
distribution.
Node modules. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is cool. Yeah, that is really cool. I just sent you guys a link to the experimental web streams thing. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
But yeah, it's like just came out literally yesterday. I like this new direction of Dino and Node trying to add more web stuff to Node. I think it's cool. I think it's gonna mean that like we can share more code and we don't have to like just have Node be different than the web anymore.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, Dino, they're very targeted on like they're trying to just bring the web APIs to the server. Like they will not invent an API if they don't have to, which I think is, and Node's obviously I think seen that and started to push it. And like, oh, okay, we can do that too. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, a CLI would be really cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
totally would.
haven't done that yet because of the focus on like making it usable by normal people.
Yeah.
trying to stay focused, because otherwise, I don't know. But eventually, like,
What's the current sort of fit so far, if they call it product market fit? Like, what's the current fit so far with your target audience, or what you expected? Obviously, you're hiring and building, so.
Well, I mean, the thing that's hard about building an app that's designed to be end-to-end encrypted is that people are using it for.
Okay,
it's,
right.
It's kind of the downside of it all of doing it this way is like, yeah, I mean, you got to learn from your early customers, and I have to say it is really challenging when we can only know what they want to tell us. Like we have a Discord server, so people hang out there, and I like ask people, hey, what are you using it for? And but yeah, we need to find ways to kind of keep in touch with what people are how people are using it and build what they want without just being able to straight up like look through the database and be like, oh, people are doing such and such things. Maybe we should build this for them, like a lot of other companies can do.
Is the activity there where you thought it would be? Like, is the trend line of the activity at least because then you can monitor that. Obviously, you know how much you're storing every 24 hours, so that's at least some sort of indicator. So every day is a new, terabyte or petabyte or whatever the number might be that you're storing. So I'm just curious, like, what the activity might be for you. Is it where you want it to be?
It's pretty good. We had a really strong launch, and then it grew for a while, and now it's sort of holding steady. There's like a core group of people that are just using it all the time for stuff, and also a surprising number of our users are coming from China, which is interesting. I'm a little worried about getting blocked in China, to be honest, because then if we do, we'll lose like 40% of our traffic or something crazy like that. But I also like that. I mean, that's a country where you really want your communications to be private and not seen by government. So I think I don't know. Yeah.
I think for me personally, I would be a daily active user when Drive comes around. When you've got the Drive storage, I think that'd be, as you start to take over features that I hang on to with Dropbox, I would convert quickly. I don't send individual files too often. That's the only reason why. If I did, I would be using Wormhole instead of. But that's just the case for me. And most of the stuff I do with Dropbox is usually like company based with Jared. So I mean, we just have the shared Dropbox, and it would actually circumvent our current flows. So as soon as Drive comes around or that kind of scenario is there, because I wouldn't want them to cannibalize you, but if Dropbox said tomorrow, like, hey, we rethought the wheel, we're gonna do an encryption, and like they have all the features I need. I would love the assurances of the end-to-end encryption, but it's just I knew who I'm sharing it with, and I kind of know
I
my
don't think
limit,
they're
my
incentivized
liabilities
to do that,
currently.
though.
Yeah.
Is
I don't
agree.
think they're incentivized to do that. I don't see that being in their
No, I don't think so either. But I mean,
roadmap.
they might get scared of Ross and change.
I hope so. Yeah, I know. I mean, the
better
thing is, like,
No one's
like,
challenged them really. Like, has anyone challenged Dropbox? Really? Google Drive kind
Box.
of.
it's the same product as it was 10
Box is
years ago,
different,
really.
though.
Box is different, but it's a competitor, I would say.
Yeah, but I mean, I think Dropbox is one. The consumer, they're the mainstream. They're the incumbent of that space, which I think is actually kind of funny that in your Mac, in your public folder, the folder in there is called Drop Space Box. So I wonder if there was like ever an IP, like if you go into your public folder on your Mac,
Oh,
that
yeah.
folder is called Drop Space capital B Box. So that's kind of interesting, but it's a whole different thing. But like they've won, and no one's challenged them really. And I think that you have an opportunity if you do it right to challenge them.
See,
And
I
you
think
gotta
they're not
take
the
all their
same
users,
product they
you gotta
were.
take the ones who really care about security and privacy and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think Dropbox is just. I mean, full disclosure, I owned some Dropbox stock for a while, and I've sold it. So, I think they're gonna just slowly dissipate because their IPO, they're incentivized to grow. They got to grow revenue, and their core offering, like you said, they're the same thing they were 10 years ago. The thing that we love is the same thing that was 10 years ago, but they're shoving a bunch of other crap in there because they have to get into productivity and collaboration and all these things that
Yeah.
make their product for me worse. Like every time Dropbox updates, I'm like, oh crap, is it gonna keep working? Because it doesn't work as well as it used to, but it keeps pushing me towards like these collaborative online Google Doc kind of things with Microsoft 365, and I don't know, it's just a bunch of junk that I don't want. So I think like Dropbox is gonna just continue to become less and less quality, and I think I think it's ripe for destruction. Disruption. Sorry.
Destroy them for us.
I don't want to see them
Destroy 'em.
destroyed. I mean, I'm not
Right,
against
no.
them. I've lost my
Me
faith
either.
in them.
I mean, I think they've done. I can't speak to the innovation. I just want them to do the kind of core thing they do well, keep doing it well. But I think even with paper is so slow. Like I like to use paper. I like the idea of how paper layers onto the Dropbox ID and the whole collaboration. I think it's kind of necessary in some cases, this collaboration idea. They just have a very wide customer base, and their app is very fractured. from a user experience perspective. Their kind of core offering has changed. But, and maybe that would happen to Wormhole over time too, because eventually, if you're a decade or longer product, you're going to have churn of user types and different user types and different needs as you become ubiquitous and whatnot. So it really is a challenge to lead product that long, really. I mean, leading product for a few years is pretty easy because you kind of get those early users. But then after a while, like at some point, you just have like a diverse set of user type that it becomes more and more challenging to lead product.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I think Faraz has a long way to go from his 3-person company to Dropbox is currently worth $12 billion market cap. So I think there's like, he has a lot of room for growth before he's even on their radar, which I think is an advantage too, right? Like entities that large don't see you as a competitor until you're doing some serious business, So you may never have to compete with them on certain aspects of the game, but yeah, it'll be interesting to watch.
As I say, look forward to the fight.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Look forward to the fight.
Yep. Gonna just, I mean, it's an adventure. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, totally.
Just gonna go for it. Yeah, and it's gonna be fun to see, to just see how it goes. Can't predict the future, but all you can do is try to affect it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, remain focused. That's the key ingredient to success is focus. One of several key ingredients.
One of several. You have to focus on several things.
We're
All right.
Are you guys? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
What were you going to say? Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna just say that we're. I'm thinking a little bit about. I've been thinking about dependencies a lot lately, because of like. I mean, we're sure the code we're writing is good, but or at least we think it is, doing the best we can. but
You're confident.
I mean, at least we're looking at it. We're doing our best to audit it and to make sure that there's no mistakes. But when we pull in all these open source dependencies, I mean, open source dependencies are like 95% of our app, and we're not auditing those to anywhere near the same degree. And so I've just been thinking a little bit about that. So that's why I posted that message in the channel a couple days ago about if anyone knows anyone who's I basically just we're trying to find if there's a way to like audit our dependencies that can give us some assurances. So we're going a little bit off focus for a little bit to try to see if there's some tool we can build or something that can help us do that, because there's nothing on the market. There's like there's like Snyk or Sneak or whatever for basic vulnerability in Dependabot and NPM audit for basic for like really basic, like are you using a vulnerable version kind of thing, but nothing that really tells you like this package changed in a really suspicious way. And like for example, if a patch version comes out for a new package and it starts to use the FS package and it starts to use net to talk to the internet or before, I would think that that's a thing someone should be notified about, or like someone should take someone should double check it before it gets merged, because like that's pretty weird, right? Like a thing doesn't need the file system and doesn't need to talk to the internet, and then so it's probably just something that's like a pure function, and then now patch version comes out and it's doing all that. It's like someone should look at that before we hit merge. So there's nothing that tells us that. Like that's the kind of level I want. Is I want something to say, hey, we noticed some weird code. Like the code, someone added a blob of minified code at the end of this file that's all not minified. Like code in the middle of a normal file. That's pretty dang weird. Or like the code on GitHub doesn't match the code on NPM. That's weird. Someone should look at that. Like that kind of thing. Because that's how the supply chain attacks happen, right? That's where the malware happens. That has happened several times inside of NPM before. So that's what I'm worried about, is like I don't want someone to do that to us and we don't know about it, and then we ship vulnerable code for like 5-10 days until the community finds out what's going on, and then they take down that package, but it's too late. Our users are already affected.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking kind of like virus scanner for packages.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're building some stuff for that right now, and we'll probably release that, open source that.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. So I don't know. I was just to respond to Adam's thing about focus.
Yeah.
Ah,
I think it's
Yeah.
related to what we're doing. I think it's important. It's part of the security. of
yeah,
it.
you're a small team though, 3 people. So,
I know.
but some things are worth it. Other things
Mhm.
aren't. That's the hard part. What do we
Yeah.
do? Everything's an opportunity cost. Whatever you're building is something else you're not building.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for having me, guys. Sorry for being late. I didn't mean to. It
It's
was
all good.
It was a really bad mistake.
It worked out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Cool.
worst
cool.
case, we got like a potential backstage out of it. Who knows? I don't know what Jared's gonna do with that.
I have 2 ideas.
I would
A,
love
just
to talk more at length about that book than we did. I didn't want to ruin the book for you, so I was being.
I've never
tongue-in-cheek
read it.
about
Maybe you and Nick could do a backstage. talking
Yeah, I
about
mean,
it.
I would spoil the crap out of that book for a lot of people if you listen
Yeah.
to it. So I mean, I
What-
got a lot of opinions about that book. It was
Yeah.
good.
One thing I
What
could
book?
do with it, if it's not
It
a
was
backstage.
Project Hail Mary.
Hail Mary from Andy Weir. Is it an Audible exclusive? It's not written, right?
It is, I believe.
Is it written?
It
I
is
wasn't sure
written.
if it was like Audible first and then book, because that would be cool. I didn't pay attention. I just saw it was from Andy Weir, and I'm like, done. I'm listening to this. And I actually listened to it on vacation. That's how good it was. I was like, yes, this was my vacation book. And I wasn't sure if I was actually going to listen to it all before the end, and I did. Like the last day, I was like, okay, finish the book. It was good.
Do you guys
Yes,
listen
I
to
mean-
audiobooks or do you read the physical book?
I'm both. I listen more than I read, but I will read. I'm not against reading. But I like the. I mean, so that book is just so well acted, and the same with The Martian, which is the same author, Andy Weir. There's 2 versions of that. There's one with a different reader, and then one with Will Wheaton. And I think both are actually really good. I've actually listened to both versions of The Martian. Crazy enough, because I like the story a lot, and so I will listen to certain books just because of the voice actor. And in this case, with Project Hail Mary, it's the same voiced actor. Like some will have multiple people do certain parts. I kind of don't like that. I like one person faking the voice of the other, like just literally acting and changing their voice. So I kind of preferred that about this person so much that I was like, let me go find more books voiced by this person. And so what's on my list right now is We Are Legion. We Are
That's a
Bob,
good one.
in parentheses. Did you listen to that one too?
Yeah.
So I'm like chapter 1 basically. So I've just begun. But
The voice actor on Audible that I've listened to, like I will find books that he reads, is R.C. Bray.
Okay.
He's really good.
So we can have like an Audible fest.
There you go.
Yeah.
We can. I mean, my books are aplenty on Audible. They're not all fiction. Some are nonfiction. Some are back and forth. So I mean, I will listen to psychology books. I will listen to novels. So I have no limits on that front.
Me too. And I listen to those at 3X.
Oh, gosh. No, you didn't listen to Project Hail Mary at 3X, did you?
I did. Yeah.
Oh gosh, maybe I can't do the show with you.
3x?
I'm rethinking my whole idea with you. Who does that? Gosh, that's the worst. Let me try it. Let me
hilarious.
try it before I bash it that bad. The idea sounds bad. Let's see it next
I've tried podcasts at
report back
3x. I
tomorrow.
can't do it.
No,
One
I
and a
just-
half x is about as fast as I get. 2x, and I start just not paying attention. I just like zone out.
And Jared asked me this on that backstage where we talked about. I think we were talking about podcast stuff, wasn't it, Jared? Like podcasting or what? I forget what it was about. But I just have too much appreciation for the purity, I suppose. I'm a purist, so I just can't listen to it any faster than like real time.
Quantity over quality for me with podcasts, at least.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, I mean, Iridium must have sounded really interesting at 3X.
It did.
Yeah.
Um,
for me,
No,
for
I'm
me,
such a
the
geek now.
podcasts, it depends on the podcast. Like certain ones, like This American Life, I have to listen to at 1x because they've thought a lot about the spacing and the timing and the music and all
Right.
that. So I want to kind of consume it as intended. But then a lot of other stuff, like where it's just people talking, I'll do 1.5 or 2 depending on the people.
Yeah.
And how fast they talk naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If they talk real slow,
Then 3x is great.
I
Speed 'em
probably,
up.
I probably talk too fast for 3x. I would guess.
I think so.
Yeah, you
I
would
was trying to
sound.
keep up with you at 1x.
Well, Nick would know. How's he listen?
Yeah.
How's he
No,
sounded at 3x?
I think you sound fine. I listened to JS Party episodes at 3x, and yeah,
Oh
sound
my
fine.
god.
Let me ask you this: if you
so
had the
used to
click
it, though.
remote, Adam Sandler's click through, assuming it had this feature, not just fast forward through all of life, but if you could just do life at 3x, would you do life at 3x?
As long as I didn't age at 3x.
Well, you would, right?
That's
Because
not a
everything would
feature, that's a
actually be
bug.
3x.
Yeah. So no, probably not. But it's weird.
Slow
Like
down,
people I only listen to
Joy.
on podcasts sound like Adam. You sound slower now talking to you.
Of course I do.
Like a dummy, like a real dummy.
You're just not very smart here, Adam. You're talking way too slow.
That's funny because I'm listening to Founders Talk, your most recent one, and I have that one set to 1.5x. I'm clipping it, and when it goes to the Overcast's clip UI, it goes back to regular speed. And I didn't know I had it on 1.5, and I went back to regular speed to clip it, and I'm like, the guest and Mitch, I'm clipping him, and I'm like, oh, he's talking way slower than I thought he was talking. And for a second, it does make them sound like they're not as smart as they are at the speed that I was at, But then you get used to that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I totally didn't
Alright,
mean you don't sound smart because you do.
No, I didn't think you
Just
meant
like
that.
a
I didn't
dummy,
think it
like a
that.
big dummy.
Just a big dummy. Well, Faraz, we believe in you, man. Thanks for sharing the story.
Yeah, totally.
To the degree you did, and keep in touch. I mean, I think we say this at least on the change. I'm pretty sure you say this here on GS Party. Jared. Come back. Share updates.
Well, he's a-
when you have new milestones.
He's a regular panelist.
Be
He'll
part of
do
the
that.
team, but just don't forget to come back here first, as you said.
Mhm.
Stay
Yeah.
true to your promise.
Of course, yeah. We'll be back if I.
Were you on the list for the maintainer shirt for us? Did anybody thank you? Was he
I
not
don't
on the
think
list,
so.
Jared?
I
Gosh,
doubt it.
I'm gonna put you on the list. You're getting a maintainer shirt. I'm gonna put a link in the GS Party primary room, and you're gonna get this shirt. So,
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Is it?
because you should. I mean, I thank you.
It's
You'll
we
see it
did
in
a
a
free
second.
T-shirt to maintainers who were thanked on Twitter or GitHub during Maintainer Week. It was a thank a maintainer on
Ah.
us kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And,
cool.
Unfortunately, nobody thanked you. So
Which
That's-
is like, I'm astonished that's actually possible.
That's fine. Yeah, that's okay.
I mean, there's lots of people. There's only
It's-
like 100 people got thanked. So there's literally thousands of maintainers that didn't get thanked.
Yeah, it's also par for the course. I'm used to not being thanked.
Well, we wanted to think. Well, we did think of a lot of people on our own, but we didn't want to be the majority of the things. So I think
Mhm.
Jared got at least a few out there. I got a few out there as well. So we didn't want to be a majority of the things. We wanted to let the community do it too.
That's
All right.
awesome. That's really cool. This is a cool shirt.
So this was part of Maintainer Week, and it was that Thursday. It was like, hey, thank a maintainer today in this 24-hour period, and they will get a shirt. And it was up to that maintainer eventually to reach back out to us, which we gave them ways to, and then we just gave them a coupon code, and they just got the shirt for free, shipping and all.
That's really awesome.
So the behind the scenes of that is like one, Steve Ballmer, developer. I think it was
Oh, got it.
polarized there.
Got
and
it.
then two,
Okay.
it was like Beetlejuice. So it's a combination of Steve Ballmer and Beetlejuice.
Right.
I was like, you say maintainer 3 times and they appear. So
That's great. That's cool. I like this design. Where do you get the shirts printed?
we have a fulfillment house in Orlando, Florida that does it for us. Their name is, what is their name?
The real thread.
Real Threads.
Yeah, if
Real
it's the same
Fred.
as the same as the JS Party shirt, it's really
Yeah,
soft
same.
and nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
Yeah, that's the same
Super
one.
I
comfy.
like that shirt.
Nice. Okay,
Yep.
cool.
So if you like that one, you'll love this one just as well.
That's right.
There you go.
Cool. All right, guys.
Cool,
Well,
guys.
thanks for having me.